Hello. Um, this is probably the third run through that I got that I did for this. Basically, I wanted to describe the body project and some of the stuff that I had to go through to get to where I'm at right now with the project and stuff. But I found that some of the stuff got a little bit too long and too long-winded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a series of smaller, more focused videos on each step of the way instead of sitting up here and trying to make one video describing a part of it and then kind of going into different subjects. So you can just take it as a piecemeal. Basically, I started this project years ago. I can't remember when because I'm trying to look at some of the files that I saved and the dates that I saved them on to determine if I actually or when I actually started the project, and I just don't really know. I think it's a project that I found some files that I shared, or some of the renders and progress that I shared on Facebook that are over, what is it, 5 years old now. And so I think I would have got through it a little bit better if I would have optimized my workflow, or if that was even possible back when I started it. Now I've kind of got it down to a science where the workflow is really optimized, and it allows me to work quickly and get things done, especially since I'm converting most of this stuff over from what I used to use as a primary app into Blender. So to describe how this actually started was that I was interested in actually making anatomical references and stuff like that. I've been interested in anatomy and been studying it in one degree or another since I was 12 years old. So gross anatomy has always been an interest of mine, and something that I think is amazing. My mom even made the comment at one point in time, since I was drawing all these pictures of things, that I would be an anatomic illustrator at some point in time. Well, I'm not really doing it for a job, but I am kind of making anatomical representations of things, or I am making anatomical representations of things. But the resources and stuff to do that, I couldn't really find any easy way to do all the parts that I wanted to do, or the majority of parts that the human body has, with ease, until somebody on some forum somewhere mentioned a life sciences database out of Japan, which provides a whole bunch of models. Now, what I did is I went there, and luckily, Google has a translate button on it. Chrome has a translate button on it. Translated the pages, found the places where I needed to go, and I was able to download some composite body parts. Now, the thing is that when I say composite body parts, anatomists have this ability to take even parts like this. These are the interossei, palmar interossei of the hand. That means that they're on your palm side surface in between your fingers, usually in between the metacarpals. They usually make your fingers kind of come in towards each other. But some things that are even cover more ground, such as vasculature, are divided up into even smaller and smaller parts. A composite body part actually is all those little tiny parts put together. So it makes it a little bit easier. And I only say a little bit easier because, well, it kind of compresses over 2,300 little tiny individual parts down into about 934. So what that looks like over here is that I have them they come in object format, a wavefront object, the OBJs. Let's just do this because I copied this beforehand. And this is the list of body parts that I had downloaded. Yes, there are 934. Did I use all of them? I'm not so sure. I think some of them are actually copies, but I did actually painstakingly go through every single one of these. And with the list that they allow us to download, search up each one of these little FMA names and to find out what that part is. And I did that for each of the 934 parts that you see listed in the background and gave them their proper names. Not only did that, after I try to optimize the mesh even further, I divided them up into their body systems like this, and into the different regions. And as you can see, I named all of them, so I know what they are and where they go. So it makes it a little bit easier for me to deal with all these different parts in here. And I mean, this is just the musculature. And after that, basically what I did is I just started importing things one at a time and trying to optimize these meshes as much as possible, because they come in and these little 3 parts that are really small have over 14,000 faces. What those faces look like is this, and the faces make up the detail, and this is even after a little bit of reduction of this mesh here. There's still a lot there because I reduced it enough, but while maintaining the detail that I thought would be sufficient enough. And later on processes and stuff, I used this type of mesh to make maps to go on to lower resolution maps or lower resolution models. And so this information is then transferred into a map and then placed onto something smaller. But as you can see, it took, oh God, how long did it take? Maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, I'm trying to remember, years back, to convert, find all those body parts, name them properly, put them in the right parts, organize them, trial and error stuff, to get me to the point where I could actually start doing something with them. And like I said, I used a different type of software, or not a different type, but a different brand of software before, and I relied heavily on other pieces of software to do parts of the job. I no longer really have to do that anymore. I can use Blender 3D here for a one-stop shop on things that I need to do, but there are some specialized applications that we'll talk about in later vids. But this is the beginning. This is the intro. Basically, downloaded a crap load of stuff. Went through 2 or 3 weeks of actually just getting in there, looking up all this stuff, renaming it and organizing it, and getting it ready to go. And then going and revising as I go along and redoing things that I probably did wrong in the past. And so we're to the point now where, oh geez, I have some pretty good renders that came out of it that I've been posting lately, and I don't know if I keep that stuff. Yeah, I do. I know I keep that stuff. The older renders were more of a stylized type of thing. So we had a stylized shader that I used, and used some sort of ambient occlusion for the darker areas and stuff like that, and the render's pretty good, and I kind of like the stylized version. There was some tweaking that I needed to do with it, you know, and we have the spine here, and I do really still like that type of style, but I've kind of, and there's a little error there that I had to tweak and fix on this vertebrae because it's not actually like that. But all this stuff came from CT data from a volunteer that actually said, oh, yeah, you can scan me from head to toe. And then people went through a process called segmentation to break out these individual parts into individual files. And so yes, every single one of these parts were an individual file at some point in time that had a name that was nondescript that I renamed. There are quite a bit here, so it was a lot of work. Currently, though, I'm using different software. That was out of Lightwave 3D, but I'm using Blender 3D now to do most of my work. And so I don't know if I have the spline and stuff that I rendered out for it. I don't think, no. So this is what it would look like in Lightwave, how I had the lighting set up and everything, and what the models looked like in there. But This is more along the lines of a newer type of render that I'm doing in Blender. And I've tweaked some things since then, but it allows me to work really quick and to bring up certain things that are easy to replicate over and over again. I started mirroring things, didn't realize things were mirrored in the past, so all those individual parts basically I just took in, and I think what they really did is just took half the model and segmented that and then mirrored it on the other side, and nobody's really symmetrical, but I think that would really speed up their workflow. And I think just because of how this geometry looks here, in some cases because it is generated by the software that the CT scanner uses and stuff, and sometimes off-station workstations, off-scanner workstations, sometimes the mesh will be randomly generated to look at the surface contours. And so when you look at this like this, well, the opposite side could look a little bit different because it randomly placed these in a different order and a different organization. So to me, in the beginning, things really looked like, well, maybe they did segment all that stuff back and forth. And on parts that are like arms and forearms and stuff like that, it may not be as important as say, internal organs and stuff. So I think all they did is they just took this and then they mirrored it over. But I'm not really sure. They may not have. But for my purposes, taking these things and mirroring them over and then not having people really realize that it is mirrored speeds up the process a lot. And has gotten me a lot further, because I mean, I think there's somewhere around like 24 muscles in the forearm and one interosseous membrane that you can't see because it's covered up in here. And so that's 25 objects. If I model them each individually, that's going to be 50, and that takes long. It takes twice as long to do all this stuff and generate maps and generate models. So basically I just took it and I mirrored it. And so that sped up the workflow a lot, and that's how I got so far so quickly with this project here recently. These aren't all the renders that I've made. Some of them I just kind of discarded or something like that, but I was kind of keeping track of progress as I went along. Some of these are rendered in Blender's Cycles render engine, and some of them are rendered in Pixar's RenderMan. But either way, you can see how much work was actually put into this project before I got a hold of it, and then the stuff that I had to do to get to this part. Like I said, this isn't everything, but we'll explain how we got to that part, or how I got to that part, a little bit later on. I just wanted to show you just the brief introduction of how many files that I had to work with. And I'll see you in the next vid.